My name is Maren Ostrander. I'm 33, and I've spent the last 9 years as a professional photographer, which means I know something most people never have to think about, that the moment you press the shutter, the copyright to that image belongs to you, automatically, permanently, whether anyone ever signs a piece of paper about it or not. So when I opened a regional bridal magazine 3 weeks after shooting my sister's wedding as an unpaid family favor and found 40 of my own photographs printed under her name with a sponsorship deal attached worth $18,000, I already knew exactly which email I was about to send from the parking lot. What I didn't know yet was that my mother had planned an entire launch party to celebrate it and invited me to attend. Welcome back to her final chapter, where every story starts with silence and ends with power. If you've ever had your work claimed by someone who never once believed in it, this one's for you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and let's get into it. I picked up my first real camera at 16, a hand-me-down from my grandfather, Otto, a retired newspaper photographer who taught me to read light before he taught me anything about settings. He used to make me guess an exposure with a handheld light meter before I ever checked the camera's built-in reading, just to prove the eye could learn what the machine already knew. 9 years into running my own studio, I still carry that same battered light meter in my bag on every shoot, even though my camera hasn't needed it in a decade. My assistants think it's a superstition. It's not. It's the one habit that keeps me from trusting a screen over what I actually see in front of me. I built Ostrander Light from nothing at 24, after 2 years assisting a wedding photographer in Charleston for barely enough to cover rent, saving every spare dollar toward a first professional kit that ran just over $12,000. Bodies, lenses, lighting, the unglamorous infrastructure nobody posts about. I financed half of it through a small business loan I paid off in 3 years, working weekends I should have spent resting, building a portfolio, one underpaid engagement shoot at a time, until the paid work finally outpaced the favors. What most people don't understand about my job is how much of it isn't the camera at all. It's contracts. It's licensing terms, usage rights, the difference between a client owning prints and a client owning the actual copyright to an image, a distinction that has ended more than one friendly-sounding negotiation I've sat across a table for. I read every clause of every contract I sign, and I write my own contracts the same way, because I learned early that a beautiful photograph is worth exactly nothing to the person who took it if somebody else controls what happens to it next. My younger sister, Kimberly, took up photography 4 years ago, mostly as an extension of her lifestyle Instagram, built around styled flat lays and destination content sponsored by boutique hotels. She's talented in the way any curated feed can look talented. She has never, not once, asked me a technical question about the actual craft. I want to be honest that some part of me still hoped every time she posted something that she might. The call came on a Tuesday evening in February, my mother's voice doing the particular warm, urgent thing it does right before an ask that's already been decided without me. Maren, honey, Kimberly's getting married in June, Charleston, at the Wentworth estate. And we were hoping, since you're family, you'd do the photography. It would mean so much, and it's such a chance for you to give back to your sister. A chance to give back. I'd heard some version of that phrase from my mother before, 8 years earlier, the week I'd asked for help covering the last few $1,000s of my first camera kit, the same week she'd wired Kimberly $4,000 for a sponsored trip to Tulum. You'll figure it out, Maren. You always do. This is Kimberly's moment. You'll have plenty of chances to build your own thing later. I built my own thing anyway, slower and entirely on my own dime, while Kimberly's thing arrived pre-funded, one family wire transfer at a time. I told my mother I'd think about it. She said brightly, as though the matter were already settled, "We're all pitching in somehow. Your father's handling the rentals, I'm doing flowers. This is just your part." I did not yet understand exactly how large my part was about to become, or exactly what would be done with it once I'd delivered it. To understand why I said yes, despite every instinct telling me not to, you have to go back 8 years, to the summer I turned 25 and decided, after 2 years of assisting, that I was ready to shoot my first solo wedding. I'd priced my first full package at $2,800, modest even by the standards of a new photographer, and I needed roughly $12,000 in equipment to deliver work I could actually be proud of. A second camera body as backup, 3 prime lenses, a proper lighting kit for receptions. I'd saved $7,000 over 18 months of assisting, tips, and side work shooting real estate listings on weekends. I asked my parents for the remaining $5,000, the first and only time in my adult life I asked them for money toward my career. My father, Walter, a retired claims adjuster who has never once, to my knowledge, taken an artistic risk in his life, told me photography wasn't a stable enough investment for that kind of money. My mother, Denise, softer but no less final, said, "You have to understand, Marin, we can't keep funding hobbies." Kimberly's Instagram is actually generating real opportunities for her. Brands are reaching out. We want to support what's working. Kimberly at the time had 4,000 followers and a single paid sponsorship worth $600. I had a growing client waitlist and a business plan I'd built with an actual accountant. Neither of those facts mattered as much in that kitchen as the word hobby. I financed the remaining $5,000 through a small business loan at a credit union that took me 3 years to pay off, working weekends, shooting engagement sessions for half my normal rate just to keep the loan payments current. I never mentioned the loan to my parents again. I built Ostrander Light into a studio that now nets over $18,000 a year, and in 9 years my family has referred to it, at every holiday, as Marin's photography thing, the same soft, diminishing phrase they've used since I was 25. Here's the part I don't say out loud very often. Despite all of it, some quiet, stubborn part of me still wanted my mother to ask a real question about my work, not how's business, but something specific, something that showed she'd actually looked at an image I'd made and seen the years of learning behind it. When she called about Kimberly's wedding and framed it as my chance to give back, some old familiar hope flared before the resentment did, the hope that doing this one enormous unpaid favor might finally be the thing that made me visible in that family, the way Kimberly always effortlessly was. My studio manager and closest friend, Renata, has watched 8 years of this pattern up close, and she didn't hold back when I told her I was considering it. "Marin, you would charge a stranger $9,000 for a Wentworth Estate wedding. Your own family wants the exact same package, unpaid, and they're calling it a favor. That's not family generosity. That's a client who thinks the invoice doesn't apply to them." I told her she was right, and I said yes anyway, the way I've said yes to smaller versions of this exact dynamic for years, because some frightened, hopeful part of me still believed that if I gave enough, eventually the ledger would balance itself, and I'd simply be Marin, not the daughter whose work never quite counted as real. I want to tell you what I expected walking into the Wentworth estate that June. A small, elegant family wedding, maybe 80 guests, a single day of shooting I could treat as a genuine gift. What I found, arriving 3 days early for the rehearsal dinner, was a 5-day event schedule: welcome cocktail hour, rehearsal dinner, ceremony, reception, and a brunch send-off the following morning. 150 guests, 4 separate outfit changes for Kimberly alone, and a full shot list her wedding planner handed me on arrival that would, for any paying client, have priced out at closer to $14,000 with the multi-day coverage and second shooter I'd normally require for an event that size. The small, sharp details started registering almost immediately, the way they always do once you know to look for them. My mother's phone, an aging model with a spiderweb crack across the corner she'd been putting off replacing for 2 years, sat beside Kimberly's brand new mirrorless camera on the welcome table, a gifted sponsorship unit worth roughly $3,200, sent by a lifestyle brand hoping for tagged content from the wedding itself. My mother had told me, just that spring, that money was tight, that they'd had to skip their annual anniversary trip. Performed scarcity in one hand, quietly funded influence in the other. The comments arrived early and often, dressed in the particular warmth my family reserves for things they don't respect. My Aunt Patrice squeezed my arm at the welcome cocktail hour and said, "Isn't it sweet? You get to practice on a real event like this. 9 years of professional weddings, and I was practicing." My cousin Tara, admiring Kimberly's gifted camera, asked me, not unkindly, whether I'd ever consider getting into real equipment like that. I own equipment worth 4 times what Kimberly was holding. I said nothing. Kimberly herself, breezing past during the reception setup, called over her shoulder, "Don't forget the drone shots for my reel. This is basically content for both of us." I stepped away from the reception floor around the second night, needing 10 minutes alone to back up memory cards, and settled into the small vendor prep room the estate had set aside for me. My phone, propped on the equipment case while I worked, lit up with a notification from an industry alert I'd set years earlier, tracking any mention of my studio's name or tagged images across the web, a habit born from one too many clients trying to repost my work without credit. The notification linked to a preview PDF, publicly accessible through a regional bridal magazine's advance access portal, titled Southern Elegance, Kimberly Ostrander's Wentworth Wedding, in partnership with Linen and Lace Bridal. I opened it with cold, careful hands. 40 images filled the 12-page spread. My images, the exact frames I'd shot 2 nights earlier at the very same estate, cropped slightly, run through a filter preset I recognized as Kimberly's Instagram signature, but unmistakably mine down to the specific angle of light I'd waited 11 minutes for at golden hour. The byline, in small type beneath the headline, read, "Photography by Kimberly Ostrander." Stay with me, because what I found scrolling further down that preview shook something loose that 400 small, soft dismissals over 8 years hadn't quite managed to. Attached to the feature, in the sponsor materials further down the portal, sat a signed partnership agreement between Kimberly and Linen and Lace Bridal, an $18,000 sponsorship deal, contingent on this exact editorial placement, contingent on Kimberly being credited as the photographer of record for a full year of future branded content. My mother appeared in the doorway of the prep room a few minutes later, checking on the timeline for tomorrow's brunch, and caught the expression on my face before I'd managed to smooth it back into anything usable. "Everything all right, honey? Did you know Kimberly submitted my photos to a magazine under her name?" I asked, quiet, level, the memory card still warm in my hand. My mother's face did the thing it does when she's already decided how a conversation is going to end before it begins. "Marin, don't make this weird. We're keeping it in the family. It's not like a stranger took the credit." I didn't confront Kimberly that night. I finished the wedding the way I finish every job, professionally, completely, delivering every image I'd contracted to deliver, because the couple whose day it actually was deserved that much regardless of what happened afterward. But the following 3 weeks, while I edited the full gallery and waited for the magazine's official print run, I quietly did what 9 years of contract experience had trained me to do without needing anyone's permission. I filed formal copyright registration on the 12 strongest images from the wedding through the U.S. Copyright Office, a routine practice I've followed for every significant shoot since a client tried to resell my work to a stock site 4 years earlier, something I'd never once mentioned to my family because it had never once seemed relevant to a conversation with them before. 3 weeks later, my mother called again, this time to invite me to a launch party at Kimberly's apartment celebrating the magazine feature's official release. The sponsorship now finalized, champagne already ordered. "We really want you there, Marin. It's such a big moment for Kimberly, and honestly, it's a moment for you too, since you're the one who actually captured it. This is your chance to give back to her by celebrating with us. A chance to give back to her." The third delivery, softer now, almost affectionate, aimed directly at me in a voice that fully expected me to arrive smiling. I said I'd be there. The launch party filled Kimberly's apartment with roughly 30 people, extended family, 2 representatives from Linen and Lace Bridal, and the magazine's photo editor, a composed woman named Sylvie Marchetti, who'd flown in specifically for the celebration. Large framed prints of my photographs, my exact frames, hung across one wall beneath a banner reading Kimberly Ostrander, behind the lens. My mother handed me a glass of champagne at the door with the easy warmth of a woman who'd fully convinced herself nothing here required an apology. Kimberly, mid-toast 20 minutes later, raised her own glass toward the framed prints and said, "This whole feature happened because I finally trusted my own eye behind the camera. It's amazing what you can build when you just believe in yourself." 30 people applauded. I set my champagne down. I let the silence sit for a moment before I said anything, watching my sister accept applause for 11 minutes of golden hour light I'd stood perfectly still to catch, for a focal length choice she'd never once asked me about, for 9 years of technical decisions compressed into a single sentence about believing in herself. I found Sylvie Marchetti near the framed prints, glass of champagne in hand, admiring the wall with the genuine appreciation of someone who actually understood photography. I introduced myself simply as the photographer of record, watched her expression shift from polite recognition to careful confusion. "I'm sorry. I was told Kimberly shot these," she said. "I did," I said, pulling up the copyright registration certificates on my phone, 12 entries, each time-stamped and filed 3 weeks earlier, each listing me as sole author and copyright holder. "These 12 images, including the 2 on your cover, are registered under my name with the U.S. Copyright Office. I have the original raw files, the metadata, and the EXIF data confirming camera serial number, timestamp, and lens used, all matching my equipment, not Kimberly's. I never signed a release granting Linen and Lace, the magazine, or Kimberly commercial licensing rights to these images. Sylvie's face went carefully blank, the particular blankness of a professional recalculating a legal exposure in real time. I need to make a call, she said, and stepped toward the kitchen, phone already in hand. My mother intercepted me by the framed prints, her voice pitched low, urgent. Marin, what are you doing? This is Kimberly's night. It's my photographs, I said. I don't owe Kimberly a magazine feature. I never did. Kimberly appeared beside our mother, her champagne glass trembling slightly. You're seriously going to do this here? In front of everyone? You did this here first, I said. You hung my work on your wall and let 30 people applaud you for it. Sylvie returned from the kitchen 15 minutes later, her expression entirely changed, the warm, celebratory brightness gone. She spoke quietly to the two Linen and Lace representatives near the door, and I watched one of them, a sharp young man named Corey, immediately pull out his own phone, dialing someone with the tight urgency of a man about to explain a very expensive mistake to someone above him. Corey approached me directly. Ms. Ostrander, I need to understand the scope of this. If these images are registered under your name without a licensing agreement in place, our sponsorship contract with Kimberly is contingent on clear rights to the feature photography. This could void the entire partnership. It should, I said. I never authorized commercial use of my work. He tried once more, glancing toward Kimberly, hoping for some correction that didn't come. Is there any world where we could quickly formalize a licensing agreement tonight, retroactively, to preserve— No, I said. Not tonight, and not for this campaign. You built an $18,000 sponsorship on a false credit line. That's between you and Kimberly to sort out. My involvement ends with the fact that I own these images. Sylvie pulled Kimberly aside near the kitchen, and I watched, from across the room, the second failed attempt unfold in real time, Kimberly's voice rising slightly, gesturing at the framed prints, insisting she'd styled and directed the whole shoot, that surely that counted for something. Sylvie's response was calm, professional, and entirely unmoved. Styling and direction aren't authorship under copyright law, Kimberly. The magazine can't run a corrected feature crediting someone who won't grant us rights. We're going to need to pull this issue's spread before print. Corey, on his second phone call near the door, delivered the final failure loud enough for half the room to hear. Yeah, we need to pause the partnership disbursement. There's a rights issue with the photography we didn't catch in review. $18,000 unraveling in a kitchen doorway, in front of the same 30 people who'd applauded 11 minutes earlier. My mother reached for my arm one last time, her voice dropping into something closer to pleading than command. Marin, please, you're humiliating your sister in front of everyone. I picked up my champagne glass, took a slow sip, set it back down. I don't owe her my work, I said. I never did. The sponsorship deal collapsed formally within the week. Linen and Lace Bridal issued a quiet statement citing a licensing discrepancy and reallocated the partnership to a different content creator. The magazine pulled the feature before print, running a smaller, corrected replacement 2 issues later that credited me by name, alongside a modest licensing fee I negotiated directly with Sylvie, roughly a third of what the original sponsorship had been worth, but mine, clean, and properly mine. I did not press further legal action against Kimberly, though Renata told me more than once that I'd have every right to. What I did instead was send my sister a formal cease and desist regarding any future use of my images across her platforms, followed by silence, the kind I've learned, over 9 years of contracts, is sometimes the only boundary that actually holds. Kimberly's follower growth stalled that summer once the brand deal fell through publicly enough for a few industry blogs to quietly cover it. I take no pleasure in that. I also didn't cushion it. The quieter thing happened 3 weeks after the launch party, when my father called, which he almost never does. He didn't mention the sponsorship, or Kimberly, or the party at all. He asked instead if I'd be willing to print an image for him, one from years earlier, a shot I'd taken of my grandfather Otto on the porch with his old newspaper camera, the same year I inherited it. I've had it saved on my phone since you posted it, he told me quietly. I never told you I look at your work. I should have. It wasn't the $5,000 from 8 years earlier, and it wasn't an apology for any of it directly. It was, for the first time in 9 years, an acknowledgement that he'd actually seen what I'd built, and I let that be enough for one Tuesday phone call. What I learned, standing in my sister's apartment beneath a wall of my own photographs applauded as someone else's vision, is that you can crop a person out of a frame. You can put a different name beneath 12 months of somebody else's technical skill and call it belief in yourself. What you cannot do is erase the person who was actually standing behind the camera, because the proof of who was really there never depended on anyone's permission to say so. That's my story. If it meant something to you, drop a comment and tell me. I read every one. And if you want more stories like this, hit subscribe to her final chapter, because there's another one waiting for you next week.